So we started talking about the Isha Yisodit, what's called the...
not coming?
Whoever comes. Okay. So we started talking about the Isha Yisodit. Remember the what's it called, the elemental fire, the four elements of the ancient world. So the fire was understood to be in space, the elemental fire, not the fire that we have here. And
what is that?
so it's also very interesting how they knew this.
What is it?
It's energy, basically. It's like the fire. It's like the fire that we have here, but it's not the fire that we have here. It's because it's in space. Obviously, there's no
electrons and neutrons. When they move around, they get hot.
No, they didn't know about electrons or neutrons. Although there were Greek theories like that about matter, but it wasn't like what we understand or don't understand, depending on who you ask. In any case, the Esha Yisodit was considered to be from Earth. From the end of the atmosphere, they had a concept of an atmosphere. They called it ruach, or air.
Why is it atmosphere?
Because the order is that there's land, there's earth, and then there's water on top.
Okay.
And then there's air, and then there's fire. So the fire is above the atmosphere. That was the elemental fire. The elemental fire was a source for all the fire here, but obviously there's no fire in space. When you go out at night, you don't see fires in space, although something that might be close to it would be the aurora, whatever it's called.
Shooting stars?
No, the aurora that you see, the aurora lights in the north and in the south. But so that could be part of what they saw and they understood, but I don't think it was either of these. It was an understanding that there's an order to the universe, and it goes earth, and then water, and then air, and then fire. So the fire was between earth.
So where's Shemayim?
After that. So the fire was between earth and Galgal HaYereach, and the circle, the orbit of the moon. That's where the elemental fire was. And then he says, so using that example, again, it's only an example. It's not that Chazal either believed this or didn't believe it. It just fits a certain way of thinking. So what does it fit in this case? משל שהוא, על דרך משל שהוא הגבוה למעלה מכל הארבע יסודות. It's the highest.
Where are you?
About 8 lines from the bottom.
Okay.
שהוא הגבוה למעלה מכל הארבע יסודות. It's higher than the other 4. It's the highest of the 4 elements. תחת גלגל הירח, and it only reaches up to the orbit of the moon. ואף על פי כן אינו מאיר בלילה. So he says here, and still you see that the night is dark. Right? There's no light in space at night between the earth and the moon. There's nothing there. לפי שהאור הבא ממנו אינו מאיר, because it's an elemental fire, and therefore the light that comes out of it cannot illuminate anything, אלא אם כן יש דבר למטה שנאחז בו ודולק, כמו פתילה. So the only way that you can enjoy the light from this elemental fire is if you here below have something to capture it. What do you have to capture it? So you have a wick. And so when you light, their understanding was that when you light the wick, you light the candle, what you're doing is you're expressing the elemental fire here below. And that's the fire that you're seeing. And why is the fire constantly pushing up, trying to go up? Because it's trying to return to its source. כן, כמו פתילה ועצים, ואחר שכלו ונשרפו העצים והפתילה, and after the wick or the wood or whatever kind of material was used to hold on to the fire, mistalek, is finished, והיה כלא היה, then the fire disappears, ואינו עולה בשם אור, and there's no light anymore, there's no illumination anymore from that. That was their understanding of what fire was. So it gives us here an example. This is the example that he uses, and it obviously needs to be learned a little bit more in depth, which I haven't. That's the example he uses here to explain what it means that the light of the infinite is captured by a mitzvah. It's as if the mitzvah is the candle, ner mitzvah, that captures, that's able to contain to some degree the infinite revelation of Hashem. V'zeu velo am haaretz chasid. And that's what it means that a person who's a simpleton, who's just an am haaretz, he can't be a chassid, meaning he can't do things out of love. He can't do things in a way that is lifnim meshurat hadin. He can't go beyond the letter of the law. You have to know the law in order to be able to go beyond it.
But in terms, no matter how low his madrega is, can get to the level of Mesiras Nefesh.
That's something else. But here we're talking about just the fact that he's an am haaretz. He doesn't know yet anything. He's a simpleton. He's a simple Jew. He can't be a chassid. Why? So we'll explain. Chassid hu bal midot ha'ava, v'hi b'chinat or. ואי אפשר להיות גילוי אור האהבה כי אם שיהיה בחינת כלי למטה שיתפעל בו. So he says, chassid is a form of divine light that's in a person. That's what a chassid means. It's the same thing as me being a candle for some higher illumination. And so something's burning me, using me up as the fuel for that divine revelation.
So even when it says it's something intrinsic, then it's not something that can be attained.
Why?
If it's a fire that's burning inside him.
No, so he explains in the Tanya from chapter 35 and 9. He explains this all in length. But what this means is that you have to have a lot of Torah and Masim Tovim. That's the fuel that's burned up when you illuminate this type of love. And the love that shines from a chassid, the love for everybody, the love for Hashem, all of that, everything that Avraham had, for instance, that is all considered to be a form of illumination of the Ein Sof. It's the Ein Sof illuminating somebody, or burning in him. Okay? So what is it using as fuel? It's using as fuel, he explains in the Tanya, the Ma'asim Tovim, the good deeds that you do. And what he means by an am haaretz is somebody who doesn't know how to do mitzvahs. It's so simple that he doesn't even know how to do mitzvahs. Certainly he doesn't know how to learn, which is the major fuel. Ki Torah or, ki ner mitzvah v'Torah or. The Torah itself is the fuel for the light. Ki chasidu b'al bindot ha'ava v'hi b'chinat or. And the love that a chassid reflects, that is the light. That's like him burning like a candle. Ki shnei pa'amim or, twice 207, light is 207, is equal in Gematria 414. V'ahavta. So he's saying you have to have two sources of light, as it were, to resonate or to give off a feeling of the warmth of love. There has to be something to hold on to, this light. Meaning, people understand that I have to cultivate in myself love for the world. He says, if it's from you, that's very nice, but that's not the chassid. The chassid is somebody who understands that he's being used. It's a different approach to life. I'm fuel for something greater. What am I fuel for? I'm fuel for Hashem's love to appear. There's also the love that I have. Fine, that's also very nice and very good. You don't need mitzvahs for that. You need to read certain books that will teach you that it's better to love than to hate. Say that. But for me to reflect Hashem's love for the world, for Yidden, for all good things, so for that I have to become fuel for it. And how do I become fuel for it? That's through my good deeds. And that's how Hashem's light, like the elemental fire that holds on to a candle and is seen because it's now captured by the wick. In the same way, the body that does mitzvahs becomes like a wick that can hold on to this elemental love from Hashem. Uvchinat kli zu hu al yedei Torah u'mitzvot. And that's Torah and mitzvahs. That becomes the fuel. That becomes the Torah is the wick, and the mitzvahs are the oil. But But an Am Haaretz here, in this case, it means somebody who doesn't do mitzvahs. Am Haaretz in the time of the sages, in the time of the Talmud, was somebody who didn't keep the most basic mitzvot. What's the most basic mitzvah? Today we would say, what's the most basic mitzvah? So today you'd say kosher, and probably Shabbos, and Nida. That would probably be the three most basic. So the Am Haaretz was already if you didn't keep kosher. And in their time not to keep kosher, there was almost nothing that you could eat. There was no processed foods. You can buy things off the shelves. So for them, not eating kosher was not taking trumot u'masrot, was not tithing the produce. So it's not kosher. You can't eat it. But they would eat it anyway. So that was the level of you have to understand that in their time, the taiva was very small. It wasn't like today. It's not like whether you want to eat all the delicacies of the world. It didn't exist. So the most was whether he took tithe, he took a truma and maasros from his apples. That was it. So somebody who didn't keep that in the time of the Talmud was called an Am Haaretz. And somebody who was frum, which they called a friend, a chaver, was somebody who was makpid on kashrus in that sense. And that you didn't need to ask them whether they had taken maasros from their produce. וגם עיקר הגורם להמשכת אור אינסוף ברוך הוא שיהיה מתלבש בתורה ומצוות להיות ענד חכים ולא וכולו הוא עיקר התורה ועשיית המצוות עצמן שבחינת הכלי קדמה לאור בשורשו ומקור חוץ עבור. In the same way, whenever we talk about any kind of emanation, any kind of illumination from Hashem, and you want to bring that down, you want to bring that infinite light down, there has to be a vessel. And the vessel is, again, it's the Torah and the mitzvahs that the person does. And the big principle here is kli kodem la'or. The first you have to have the vessel, then the light can come down. Meaning, in other words, naseh v'nishma, like we said. The nishma here is le'esuf, is to bring together the light from Hashem. So it's not that I do a mitzvah and I expect the mitzvah to illuminate me. On the contrary, the mitzvah, I need to think of it as I'm gathering wood for the fire that's going to come down. Same thing that was done on the mizbeach. You bring the wood and you bring the korban, and then the fire comes down. That's otherwise it's just you. So you're a very good person. It's also very important. It's also very good. But that's not what we mean by the light of the infinite coming down. So that's what Avram's chap was. That's what he understood that others didn't understand. That there's an infinite light that I have to be a vessel for. So how can a vessel contain infinite light? So that's the secret of run and return. That's what he understood.
Look, with resonance,
Okay.
if you can resonate yourself by getting into the frequency of Torah and mitzvos, and get yourself in that vibrational frequency, then you'll be in sync with Hashem, and you can go and continue that infinitely.
So you say that the resonance is the Torah in the whole mix. Is that everything has to resonate in the right way.
What does resonate mean?
He means like that there's a frequency to everything.
The wave is the wave.
Right. Enough resonates.
And what resonating is when that wave comes together with another wave.
Right.
Somewhere.
That's really what resonance means. You're thinking of vibrate.
Well, I'm saying, the infinite light, when we tune ourselves into the frequencies that Hashem wants for the world, then we'll resonate with Hashem. That's what I'm saying.
So that's already a question, whether the pulse of life comes from Hashem or whether the pulse of life needs to come from me. Meaning, do I have to tune myself to that particular frequency, or does that frequency tune me? Meaning that when that light comes to me, it changes me.
Mm-hmm.
So my understanding is that it's more about Hashem changing me than me trying to fit myself to Hashem. Meaning, in other words, that it's a little bit more technical. Again, the Torah certainly tunes a person. It's not just because it changes the mind; it changes how he sees things, it changes how he understands things. But still, the main thing, at least from the Alter Rebbe, is that mitzvahs are the fuel that drives this whole process.
So how do we do it? If we're starting the process, how do we do the mitzvah to begin with?
Because you just do it. You just do it. There's nothing very technical about it. It's just go do it. And it becomes the wood that will burn. It becomes the fuel that will burn, again, in you and be able to capture the light of the infinite. Obviously, there's many particular details here that he's not getting into. And these were explored by the later Rebbeim. וכמו שכתוב במקום אחר בפסוק ואלה המלכים אשר מלכו בארץ אדום לפני מלוך מלך בישראל וכנודע ששורש בחיות המאכל שדומה. He wants here to explain why the vessel precedes the light, why you first have to have a vessel. And some people, it's not, today people want an experience before they'll do anything. Okay, give me an experience and then I'll hitch myself up to your wagon. Show me that you have something to give me, and then I'll join you. First, they have an experience of the light of Shabbos, and then they say, I'll keep Shabbos. If you show me that really what I get from it is some great experience, because people are no longer willing to be servants. They don't want to. It's very hard to convince somebody that your role in life yourself. You're not going to take it's very hard. When there was feudalism in the world, everybody understood that simple is a very simple idea because that's how people lived. They were born to serve the noblemen because the land belonged to the noblemen. Ki li kol haaretz amar Hashem. It was like a reflection of everything belongs to Hashem. So it was very clear to them that I need to serve the noblemen. So it wasn't a very difficult chap to understand that I also need to serve Hashem. Because they were servants from birth to death. That's how they lived. But today, that Hashem is fighting for our freedom. He wants us all to choose it. So it's very hard to choose it. Why would you want to choose a life of servitude? So you see that the people who do mature at some level, they understand that they need to be of service. So either they become a public servant, which in Israel is not a very holy thing to do, but that's just because of how the political system is here. But really, if you're a public servant in the sense of you're running, let's say Mobileye, okay, and you're bringing all this money into the country and so on, so you don't wake up or go to sleep based on what you feel like. You're serving a higher purpose. Maybe that's not the best example, but that's an example. So you begin to understand that what you're doing, and what you did in the Ministry of Health. So what did you feel like? That you're serving the public. You didn't think the public was serving you. But there are people there that feel that it's just a job. And so everybody's serving me to get my paycheck at the end of it. But really, when a person matures, when he becomes 13 years old, what does it mean to have that? To have consciousness. That he understands that even if Hashem is fighting for his freedom, that he needs to choose correctly. And to really be mature means that I need to serve things. So what do I serve? I serve my family, I serve my wife, I serve my children. I take the load on my back, even though nobody's forcing me to. Why do I do that? Because I realize that that's what it means to be an adult. That's what it means to be a mensch. Of course, I could sit on the beach all day and not do anything and get by with, working once a week, and that's all I need.
So much.
What?
So much.
Oh, I don't know, once a month, whatever. Depending what I work in. But that's not a life. Most people don't do that. Most mature people, they lead a normal life. They have a home. You want the load. Tov lagever sheisa ol mineuvav. It's good for a man to carry the burden, carry the load from his youth. Why is it good? Because it gives you a good life. That's how it works. But that's really your purpose. Because the moment that you get into your head that I'm not going to be here forever, the moment you finally get it through your thick skull, which is it's very hard for us to believe this. Okay, it's like Sartre used to say, or Camus is the same in French. I think he was the one who said, death is something that happens to other people. It can't happen to me. until it happens to me. Then I don't know that. So because it happens to other people, so you don't believe that it's actually going to happen to you. So bo cheshbono shel olam always means to do cheshbono shel olam, to think about what the purpose of life is you have to understand there's an end to life. And then you have to ask, so what am I going to do with the time that I have? If all the person wants to do is drink martinis and if I'm even kosher, I don't know what that is. And
Martini's wine.
oh, so it's not kosher probably. So he wants to drink a good whiskey on the beach and watch the sunsets. Say that. He's alive. We can't say he's not alive. He's eating. He's drinking. He's taking in oxygen. He's putting out whatever he's putting out. But that's not really life. So you have to understand what am I going to do with my 70 years? What do I want to do with them? So when he becomes mature, he understands I have to be a servant. I have to serve some purpose. So the purpose to serve, if he's a Jew, is he says, I want to serve Hashem. So you can come to that realization by yourself. You don't need to be a serf in some fiefdom in order to understand that. You can understand that just by being mature. And you can understand that from the time you're 13 years old. That there's something that you want to do to contribute to the world. The highest thing you can do is to bring the light of Hashem down, obviously, in anything that you do. But now he wants to say, so how do we know that the vessel comes before the light? Meaning the actions, the mitzvos, they come before the light illuminates in them, before the fire captures hold of this burning material, this material that can be burnt. So we know this, he says, from the fact that there were first kings in Edom, there were first kings by Esav, before there were kings of Israel. And the kings of Esav, they're considered to be the vessels of this world. How do we see this? So that's one example, that they shattered and broke. And what fell down from them, again from the spiritual reality called the kings of Esav, what fell down into our reality becomes the food that we eat. And that's, he says, the reason, like we've learned many times in Torah, or that the reason we get sustenance from the plant life or the animals or even the inanimate, like salt that we eat, is because this higher reality, which was higher, the kings of Esav, fell down below us and was captured inside the bodies of the lower beings, of the inanimate, the vegetables and the animals. And so that's why when we eat them, we receive sustenance, because we shouldn't be able to receive sustenance from something lower. And he's not talking here about energy in the sense of calories. What he's talking about is that they contribute spiritually to the person. And that's why it's important that he eats certain things and not eat other things. If it was just energies, so there's no difference between a chazer, between a pig and between a cow. All the same. The energy is the same energy. If you're talking about calories, it doesn't matter. If it's about vegetables, it doesn't matter whether I took the mice or I didn't take the mice. It's still the same apple. But if I'm talking about that this is supposed to give me spiritual sustenance, to create vessels that are mitzvos, so there not every type of energy is the same. So here we're talking about not about the calories. The calories are probably the same, even though probably slight variations. I don't know what the difference between pig's meat and cow's meat is, but probably some variation. But to give me life in the sense of giving me vessels that can then be used to capture the infinite light of Hashem, so that can only happen if somehow these animals, these vegetables, have something from a higher place, higher than me, which is what I'm trying to even reach. I'm trying to reach that higher place. I'm trying to take from that light of the world of the kings of Edom. It returns his soul to him. It gives him back his soul. ולכן עיקר המשכת אור אינסוף ברוך הוא תלוי בבחינת כלי שעל ידי מעשה המצוות וקיומן בפועל ממש, שעושים בחינת כלי מזה נמשך האור מתלבש בהם. So for that reason we need to make a vessel first, because really the vessel is made from material that has a higher source than, again, not material in the sense of the physical material, but the spirit inside the material is from a higher source than even myself. That's also why the Arizal, for instance, says that an Amma Aretz, not the Arizal, the Talmud says already, the Arizal refines it a little, that an Amma Aretz is not allowed to eat meat. You shouldn't give him meat. Why not give him meat? Because he doesn't know how to make a mitzvah out of it. Because he'll use it just to glut, just for the caloric value, just for the satisfaction value. But he won't know how to make it into a source for his service of Hashem. Yeah, it takes time to learn, even when you're young. It's not so clear that you know how to eat meat in a way that it becomes. I mean, how many people, when they eat meat, so they think of a sugya in the Gemara? But that's how you're supposed to use it. And you have a hard sugya, that you have a hard issue in the Gemara that's hard for you to understand. And the amazing thing is that when you eat meat and you drink good wine, then suddenly your mind opens up. It's not for your stomach to open up. Your stomach's going to open up anyway. You can eat anything. But the meat, if you use it the right way, especially on Shabbos, there you come to great hasagot. You come to great understanding. Anyway, we have to end. So we'll continue with Hashem tomorrow.
I just fall asleep.
What?
I just fall asleep after the challenge.